Choosing a weapon. Good evening, I'm Toby, and this is Lapis 210. Tonight, we're going to talk about choosing a weapon. When you're choosing a weapon, let's not relegate ourselves to just a specific platform or a specific caliber. One needs to think about first what they need it for. Secondly, their budget in mind. And then three, an overall scheme and maneuver on how you're going to employ this weapon in its most likely use and function. When choosing a weapon, you have to think about the concept and application method. I use this method, concept and application, as a means of determining what I need and how I'm going to apply it. And at the end, its actual use. Now that you've actually considered the concept and its application, the first step would be brainstorming. Thinking about what you need. Thinking about and determining what its best use is going to be. I'm building an AR-15 for what? Home defense, as a vehicle gun, range toy, generalized training. Maybe I'm an armed professional, I actually take it to work. All those are actually viable uses, but you have to determine what its full intention is for. Don't just choose a gun because it's popular on TV or on YouTube. You see it in movies or video games. Do your research. Truly think about what this weapon's for, and once you've done that, move on to the next step. At that point, consider what your budget is. Consider and think about how much money I have to play with. When I'm choosing a weapon, I don't like to skimp on the parts of the gun, the main portions of the gun, the barrel, the receivers, the trigger, all the components that make the gun actually function. Those parts, I don't like to skimp on. But with today's advances in technology in terms of optics, I don't have to spend $800 on an aim point. I've found that Primary Arms and Vortex, other manufacturers out there, make fantastic optics. And while albeit they may not hold up quite as well as the Aimpoint does, they're pretty darn close. So again, do your research. Brainstorm and then look at your budget. Your budget is really going to start dictating what components you can use versus what you want. The next step is looking at pre-built versus building your own weapon. Some weapon platforms just don't lend themselves to being built very easily, like an AK-47. This weapon takes a little bit more skill and some very specialized tools in order to properly assemble this weapon. And given the wide swath of different variations that come from different countries, it can start to play havoc with your build. Like the ARs, these are like the Jeep and the Volkswagen Bug of the gun community. These guns can be relatively easily assembled in your own home, heck, even your own bedroom, and require very few specialized tools to assemble them, like a vise or a barrel wrench, a castle wrench for the back of the castle nut. Those are more specialized tools that you need to properly assemble this weapon, but by and large, this gun can be assembled by anybody. You could buy it with just a receiver and barrel in place and start putting the rest of the gun together yourself. It's not difficult at all. And then going back to need versus want. This will also start driving what you start to accessorize on this weapon. I may need a functional weapon, okay, that's obvious, but I may want a high precision barrel. Does the high precision barrel truly meet my needs, or is it a less expensive barrel? It's still going to offer great reliability, good accuracy, albeit it may not be the Christensen Arms carbon fiber wrap barrel. Maybe just a good standard AR barrel, Green Mountain. Or step up, maybe you go with a Noveske barrel, you go with a Sons of Liberty Gunworks or a Bravo Company. There's a multitude of different companies out there making great barrels, right? The guys over at Ballistic Advantage, they're very good barrels and they're extremely well priced. You could go with a whole multitude of different choices. Start looking at what you need versus what you want. And that's also going to play a considerable role in determining what accessories and how you outfit the weapon. Well, we covered the concept of what the build is for and how I'm going to build it, or I'm going to purchase it. Let's say we're focusing on building the weapon. Or at least I purchased a pre-built weapon that's very basic. And now I'm going to plan to start upgrading that weapon. Start looking at the application. Make a plan. Now, you've already had a plan in your head before. So you purchase an AR-15. All right, do I want to purchase one at a rifle length or a pistol length? Well, I may want to purchase the pistol length, given that it's going to give me a little bit better movement within the house in the confines of bedrooms and hallways with furniture and other debris. It could provide me with a little bit better weight savings as well. Maybe your spouse is going to pick this up and she doesn't work out and you do. There's a lot of different things to think about when choosing the overall scheme of the weapon. Again, going back to concept, what is it for and how are you going to apply that? So with application, look at your budget and start buying those parts. Start with the basics first. Get your receivers, get your barrel, get your trigger components, all your lower receiver and upper receiver components. There's no need to skimp on a decent trigger. There's a lot of good choices today. So if you can afford a slightly better trigger than the standard one that comes in the $60 AR lower pack, then step it up a little bit. Like Midwest Industries makes a very affordable, high-end trigger that's a drop-in piece, meaning it doesn't require a lot of extra assembly. It comes pre-assembled, it drops straight in, much like others in the industry, and it gives you a great basis to work from. A highly functional trigger, very reliable, and a great length of pull on that with a light pull. So it's going to be very good for you. Then you start looking at the other components, buffer weights. You start looking at buffer springs, right? Springco makes an excellent buffer spring for your weapon, and it really changes the overall function of that weapon on how hard it recoils, how smooth it is, the ejection. It starts changing the weapon in a much better way for you. It makes it more reliable, it makes it smoother, it makes it feel less gas. Start choosing these higher end components bit by bit, and start doing your research. Go on YouTube, go on Rumble, go on BitChute, go on the different blog sites. Defense Review is a great one. Soldier Systems, the firearm blog. All these are going to offer you some good options that you're not going to have on your own unless you're part of that industry in a professional way. Even for myself, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. I still go on these on the regular. Always do my research. Check with other people, much like you do in combat. You don't just check your own gear, your teammates check you as well. So stop in with other places. Recoil Magazine, Recoil Off Grid. Tom over at Recoil Off Grid is a wealth of knowledge, and he made some great articles. He does great research. Check him out. See what he has to say. Now you've made your purchase, you start getting your parts. As you start buying more and more components, don't put stuff off later that can be taken care of now. Maybe it's better to get that component now than going to see a new movie. Or maybe it's better to get a certain component that keeps coming out of stock quickly versus one that's in stock all the time. It's not always about what I can get right now. Sometimes you need to focus on what you have to get, or what's going to be more of a necessity or harder to get later on. All right, focus also not just on what your friends might carry. Listen to what your buddies have to say, but think about more than just what's on TV, on a video game, in a movie, what's hot in the magazine. All those things are fantastic, and YouTube's a wealth of knowledge. The internet is a wealth of knowledge, but you need to think about you. You need to think about what it is that you're looking for, what it's going to do for you, and how you're going to actually use it. Another thing to think about is going cheap. All right, I call it being a swap meet commando. There's no need to go cheap on certain things. Now, where I might cut corners on an optic. I love primary arms. All right, are they at quite the same level as, let's say, the Leopolds or the Schmidt and Benders and the Night Force? No, and they don't claim to be. But they make an excellent optic with excellent clarity and an amazing warranty and durability. I firmly believe in Vortex and primary arms. They're fantastic optics. Both these companies stand behind their products 100%. So I can cut a little bit of a corner there and go with a more budget-minded optic, but I'm not really sacrificing overall quality on that. All right, you start slicing hairs. If you have the budget to spend the money on a more expensive optic, that's fine, do it. I find that it's sometimes it's unnecessary. I can get excellent performance out of these optics, and I have no problem taking them into combat. I've seen how much durability they have. I've seen what they can handle. I've never drove over my gun with a car. All right, I've never dropped it off a building. I've never done some of the torture tests, dragging it behind my car down a road. I've never done those things. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. So, am I saying that you should sacrifice the overall quality? No. What I'm saying is weigh cost versus quality, right? Quantity versus quality. Sometimes it also makes it a little bit easier. I have a lot of different weapons. I find that I can get really good optics off of Vortex and primary arms and still not going broke, and be able to outfit more weapons with a relatively high-end, in my opinion, quality optic, because it's not really lacking anything that I need. It has excellent clarity, good durability, an amazing warranty, excellent reticles, good illumination. Again, at that point I'm splitting hairs, so I can afford to get 2 or 3 of these optics versus having to get only one. And that's going to be a great optic if I get it from Night Force or I get the EOTech. Absolutely, they're fantastic, and no one would argue that. But I'm relegating myself to one little spectrum when I can kind of diversify myself a little bit more and get a little bit more for my money. And then finally, again, look at what you need. Really focus in what you need. That's going to drive everything: budget and need. All right, so now you're online, you're doing your research, you're making purchases, you're going on there on the different sites, and now you're purchasing stuff. You're getting things lined up. Well, what should I start with first? Again, if you're buying a pre-built gun, then you're getting a pre-built gun. Most likely that's going to require everything you need for the gun to go bang. But if you're buying a stripped down gun, but still pre-built, let's say the receiver with the barrel and let's say a bolt carrier, now you have to start choosing other parts. Or you get the basic build, but you want to start upgrading. Choosing a good handguard is a big place to start. Choosing a higher end trigger is a great place to start. As long as it's a properly assembled and made from great materials, your bolt carrier group, a standard bolt carrier group's fine. If you want to start stepping up to different bolt carrier groups that are treated with different technologies, nickel boron or some kind of spray, that's fantastic too. You're going to benefit from that purchase. But get the key components of the gun. Again, you want a good barrel, you want a decent receiver. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. 60 series or 70 series aluminum is still 60 series or 70 series aluminum. Where it starts to become more of a play is when you start looking at some of the steel on some AKs versus others. Properly staked parts, like your gas key being properly staked. It comes with gas block is pre-fit on the barrel. Is it staked and pinned in place, or is it just pressed in place? Start doing your research on that. Make sure that you have your key components of the gun, the bolt carrier, the barrel, your trigger group, all right? Your receivers, your handguard. Those pieces are high-end, good quality. If you can't afford it, do your research on what you're seeing that's good out there. People like to down on Aero Precision as a more budget-minded company, or Palmetto State Armory. They're not budget. But why they cost budget is because they own they own all the machinery. They're big enough that they own everything already. That means they can charge less overhead because they're not paying for their machines. That stuff's already been paid for. Or like Aero Precision or Mega, they're already tied in making aircraft parts. It's easy for them. They can keep those prices down because they're making money and turning out product for other things other than just weapons. So again, do your research. All right, buy now. Don't just wait till later. Start getting your components together. Go down your checklist. Next is the optic. We already kind of covered this earlier. Again, if you want a high-end optic, get a high-end optic. You're not going to go wrong with that. Just understand what you're spending and what you're getting. Again, I go back to Primary Arms Vortex Optics. They're fantastic. I love them. They help sponsor my channel. I approach them initially for support. Why? Because I believe in the products. I want to show those products that I believe in. So that's a great way to go. Handguards, I work with Midwest Industries. They make fantastic handguards. I also work with Unique ARs. They make amazing handguards. So that's also a great place to start. And with Midwest, you can get everything from a completed gun and almost every component you can need to put into the gun. So again, that's a great place to start as well. Once you've got that, look at your iron sights. Start looking at those components. Maybe start looking at a good muzzle brake. And start doing your research on muzzle brakes versus inline comps versus flash hiders and those hybrids in between. No, again, it's intended purpose. I'm a big advocate for inline comps for weapons that I'm going to be shooting inside almost specifically or inside of a car or around a car. I don't want to blow the windshield out or side windows if I'm shooting from within the car. Or I don't want to shoot next to somebody's face with a very aggressive muzzle comp like you see here. They're going to be eating all that flash. It's not going to make their life very good at all. In fact, it's going to make them quite miserable, or you could actually even injure somebody. So again, take that into consideration. Then finally start looking at the other components, a lot of the little add-ons. Grip panels, the grip on the weapon system, charging handles, all these little components you start to see added to the weapon that add into it. Those are all important, and they kind of add to the overall system as itself. Okay, so it's not just the gun. Think of the gun as a system, as a weapon system. It's a lot of separate things that come together to make a platform that you use for whatever its intended use is. Even on a general purpose rifle. This is a range rifle. Don't hang a bunch of crap off this rifle that's not going to do you any good. Now don't just buy some laser that you found at the swap meet, all right, or you found at the gun show, and it gives you this visible laser that you really don't need. Actuation pad coming off of it, or pressure pad coming off it with a coiled up spring like a foam cord. These things get snagged on stuff. They don't last under recoil. You buy now, you get to buy again and again and again. Again, look at your intended use. Be smart about your picks, all right? There are some things, but you don't need to go high end. I found things on Amazon that were unfortunate knockoffs, and when I've got them in hand just to test them out, they actually held up pretty good. So again, do your research. Think about what it is you need in the weapon to function. Good panels on the handguard are important, like you see here. These help reduce that heat transfer when you start shooting the gun a lot. If you're not wearing gloves, you might want to think about that. And even then, when you're wearing gloves or you're shooting like you do out here in Texas, it gets pretty hot. So the combined heat of the environment coupled with the heat coming off the barrel starts to make a pretty unusable platform. If I can't hold it, can't really shoot it. So again, do your research on what you need, think about what that is, and budget for it. Now there's a final thing to think about here. As you're getting this build put together, you may not have the requisite skill sets to put it together. That's okay. I've been doing this a long time, and there's things that I can't do if I don't have the right tools. For example, assembling an AK. I can put some parts on it, but I can't build one from scratch. I don't have the press and other tools that I need to properly assemble an AK. Also, I'm not trained in assembling an AK. I can shoot one, take it apart, do a lot of great stuff with it, go out and wage war, but it doesn't make me an AK builder. But also be aware of all the self-proclaimed experts and all those ninjas online LARPing around and telling you how to do your business. Look at professionals online that you can trust. And I don't mean people who are popular. Look for people who are knowledgeable, people who get referenced a lot, people who actually build. And even then, be aware of the old gunsmith trap. Just because someone's a gunsmith or a professional builder doesn't mean they know what they're doing. He may specialize in building precision rifles and ARs, but may not have a lot of experience with an AK and think, I can do this, it's easy enough. And next thing you know, your AK is being butchered. All right, maybe they're on the hook to buy you a new AK, but maybe some of those parts that got butchered are not easily replaced. For example, Zenitco parts, very difficult to replace. What if they somehow damaged an expensive grip like this from Executive Ordnance? I can't get those anymore. So understand, you want to go to somebody who knows what they're doing if you don't. And make sure you do your research, and quantify that. Make sure that people know who this individual is. Do you know somebody who's done business with them? All right, or you go on the website and they have references. Reach out to one of those references if you can. Cross-reference everything, do your diligence, and make sure that you know who's going to be helping you assemble this project. It needs to work right the first time. The last thing you want to find out is your gun doesn't gas right and you're trying to defend yourself. A final thought. Also, if you're going to be building this weapon as a night fighting weapon, okay, say home defense, you're probably not doing Call of Duty and fast roping into an objective in the middle of the night in some foreign country, all right? Most of us aren't doing that. But if you do train with night vision, or you intend to train with night vision, also take those steps necessary for that. When you start to look at that as a defensive platform, or even, God forbid, have to be an offensive platform, consider the money that's going to take. When it comes to night fighting, you can't go cheap. You need to spend the money and do your research to ensure that you're getting quality product that does what it's intended to do. I can't stress this part enough. With that said though, having a good light is a very cheap, easy access part to night fighting. If you're going to fight at night, let's say in the confines of your home or your property, having a quality light is important. It doesn't have to just be Surefire anymore. There's a lot of great companies out there, and albeit Surefire is still the king of the hill, there are other companies like Enforce that I've worked with at length, and they're fantastic lights. I've ran them on machine guns, belt-fed machine guns, and other rifles and weapons platforms overseas. It's even an issued weapon light. I have never had a bad experience with Enforce. So look at that. I've heard some good and bad with O-Light. Obviously Streamlight's a great quality. There's a lot of good options out there to start doing with, and a lot of new companies popping up that make parts that bolt onto pre-existing parts. Start doing your research. Check it out. Find out what's out there. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me as well. I'll look for it in the comment sections on this page. Subscribe if you can, pass me on to others. And as always, from the bottom up, taking your environment, and from the top down, make sound decisions. Good night.